What's up, everyone? Coach Ben podcast here. It's just me, and we have a special guest. No Jim today. Um, Whenever it's just me doing the interview, this is how it usually is. I usually am very interested in the topic, and it is a very special guest that I bring in whenever it's just me. Whenever it's Jim and me, those are usually Jim's friends, and they have been great guests. But this one's going to be a little different. You know, you're going to notice the way I ask the questions are going to be different. And the purpose of this podcast episode is basically to get information out of Coach Chong here, and have him go over his training with me. So before I go any further, let me introduce Coach Chong.
Hi, Coach Ben. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for having me here. We just finished our 12-week hyperbaric fascia training, so I wanted to come on and share some of our experience together.
I asked you to come on, but thank you for being humble. I would say that I started the training with you with the intention of having you do a podcast episode with me. I didn't want to do this first. I wanted to do your training first. But can you real quick give the audience a just a quick introduction? You know, I don't want to cover too much old ground. You have a lot of interviews out there, but I just want to give a quick introduction to people that don't know you.
So my name is Chong Xie. I am the Tai Chi fascia coach of UFC Strawweight champion Zhang Weili, and I also work with UFC athlete Alistair Overeem for the upcoming fight in February 6th against Volkov. Basically, I established a new type of training called hyperbaric fascia training, and is really a research of mine over 7 years. And it is the foundation, the essence of a very ancient martial arts called Tai Chi, and it is the essence of Tai Chi. So it's more than just the form, more than just a copy of what everyone else is doing, or the martial arts Tao Lu, or the form. It's really what they are trying to accomplish in terms of the um, fascia strengthening in the body, the holistic strengths they're trying to develop, and also the various benefit to health they're trying to achieve through this type of training.
Hmm. So that one of the things I want to make sure we cover on this interview is I want to clarify a lot of these terms that you're using. So before we get into my training with you, can you just tell us real quick what exactly is fascia?
Yeah. So fascia is actually, it's a very mysterious substance before, because the Western science, what they used to do when doing that section, what they used to do is they threw out the fascia altogether. The fascia is like the yellowish, whitish connective tissue everywhere in the body when you actually cut up the cadaver. But usually in a cadaver, the tissue itself is dried up, so it basically doesn't have its original structure or shape, or the water content. So it's very hard to understand what it does. So in the beginning of a lot of the you know research that were done to study the human biology, the fascia was really thrown out in all type of studies. So what they were trying to understand was really, okay, what is the muscle doing next to each other? And this is where they gather they propose the sliding filament theory, which is muscle contraction, which is really a simplified version of how the body is supposed to generate force. And he only mentions the muscle to muscle relationship, but it doesn't really cover anything um, or the true autonomy of the human body, whereas uh, the fascia has 3 layers. It actually penetrate everything in the body, including your muscle fiber, including your tendons, including even some of the cells, including your brain tissue. So pretty much everything in your body has fascia in them. So fascia is really the communication highway of the human body. Is also a it could be classified as an organ by itself because it has so many influences to different aspect of the human body function. For example, wound healing. Now we know through fascial research. We also understand that fascia controls, injury prevention, force transmission, and has various effects and relationships with cancer. So that's where where the fascia is going. I published my work 7 years ago. Is really just a discovery of something I call the hyperarch mechanism. It's really a mechanism of the foot that can um, stabilize the foot in a fashion that prevents, at a minimum, prevents ankle sprays. And from there, I've spent hours and hundreds of hours, and also spend a lot of money on research of what exactly uh, this mechanism does to the human body over a period of time. And then what I discovered is that it had a significant relationship or effect to the fascia tissue, and also it had a tremendous benefit and a you can use it to augment some of the abilities of glutes, for example. That's the
Okay.
first that was my first 3 years of discovery. But then after that, I found out through the fascia it had a much larger holistic effect to the body than just the glutes alone.
Right. I want to cover all that uh, later on, but I want to take a real quick step back and just um, get to the essence of your training. Okay. Can I give a quick summary of it, and you tell me if it is an accurate portrayal?
Sure.
So after going through your training for 12 weeks, we've worked together for 12 weeks. I did about 3 weeks on my own, uh, and then before I contacted you. Um, and what I would say your training, the essence of it, what it's all about is re-engineering or kind of taking attributes that high level athletes have that you have kind of discovered, and then trying to recreate these attributes, um, that you're calling, which is your trademark, the hyperarch method. But some of these attributes, for example, are things that you kind of covered already, right? Like ability to use the glutes. So lack of quad dominance. I'm a traditional strength conditioning coach, so I understand quad dominance and using the posterior chain. But one of the ways that we were taught how to engage the posterior chain is to use exercises that engage the posterior chain. We were never really taught about fascia, and specifically your training is geared around the foot, right? So I'm
And
trying to
hands.
boil it. And what?
And hands.
And hands, yes. I'm basically trying to boil it down to like a elevator pitch. Like if you were to tell me what your training is going to do for me, let's say I'm a high level athlete. I don't care about fascia. I don't care about glutes. I just care about winning in my sport. Like how would you explain your system to somebody like that?
Um, I would say there are basically 6 areas, right? The number one would be let me simplify. So the conventional training that we have today is basically you have the strength training side, right? So you do the exercises and you strengthen the muscles and you get more output, right? Then you have the PT side, which says, okay, if you're injured, you know, you do this number of exercises, right? And then you recover. And the high-power fascia training actually addresses from a point where, if let's say the person's injured, the first thing that the training will do is actually heals the person from the whatever chronic injury or injury the person has. And once the person start to heal, then the ability, the athletic ability, and the functions of the glutes and abs and holistic strength goes up. So it's sort of does two things with one type of exercise, rather than separate segregating into two areas. So it has a lot of benefit in resolving pain, chronic pain, increase athletic performance, prevent future injuries, recovery from injuries faster. It increases agility, explosiveness, increases your stability and balance. Um,
Basically a performance enhance. It's basically your performance coach. That's essentially what it is, right?
right. You can definitely um, increase a lot of the performance with this type of training, but you have to, number one, understand where the current situation with the person's fascial fitness is, and then design exercises around it to build up the person's fascial fitness level and increase performance.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty much in line with what I kind of think your training is the main benefit is yes, is definitely great for injury prevention, which for somebody like me, I'm not a high level athlete, but I care a lot more about performance because until you're injured, right? And when you're injured, then okay, now you care about injury prevention. I still think like an athlete, even though I haven't been an athlete for probably 10 plus years. So let's get into let's the best way I think to introduce your method is to just use my case study, right? So
Mhm.
I originally found out about you um, just randomly through kind of combing through the internet, but I saw some of your work, and I'll be honest. When I first saw it, I was just like, oh, this is just foot training again. This is just stepping on the PVC pipe. This is Nick Curson did this like 5 years ago. It's the same stuff. That's what I thought, right? Because when
Right,
you look at it from the outside, it looks like you're just doing foot stuff, right?
right,
That's that is actually very important, um, like point to make, because there are people that reach out to you. I see you repost this, and they're saying, oh, I've been doing these exercises that you posted and it's helped me so much. Like all this pain went away, I'm jumping higher, power, all this stuff, right? And they haven't even worked with you. So I try to do a lot of this stuff on my own, right? And let's just put it this way. Yeah, I had some success, but when I started working with you, it's like a completely different thing. It's like what I knew was almost like backwards. What I thought was happening was more of like a visual effect, and what you're teaching has more of an internal effect.
right.
So I originally found out about you, and I'm just going to be as transparent as possible. I am a sports bettor, so sports bettors tend to all lean in one direction, right? And so there was a fight, Jessica Andrade taking on Zhang Weili, and look, I didn't make this decision, but everybody in the sports betting community
Right.
thought that there was no way Zhang Weili was going to win. There's no way, So I bet, a small amount. It wasn't a big amount, but I just watched as everybody who bet on Jessica Andrade, they looked in horror as she was destroyed in, like, was it 30 seconds? It was like 30 seconds, right?
42 seconds.
42 seconds.
Yeah.
So that is a very crazy result to me. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, hold on a second here. This is very strange. I have never seen a Chinese person generate that much force. But she displayed power that day that I never saw before, and she beat somebody who's considered one of the most powerful people in the UFC in 42 seconds. So after that, I looked at Zhang Weili's uh, Instagram, and I saw she was doing some what I thought were like isometric holds with lunges, and she was jumping. I was like, it's plyometrics, and it's plyometrics, and it's some isometric holds. I was doing isometric exercise at the time. I was, oh, this is nothing new. I'm on the right path, right? But then I started looking into more in your stuff, and you had a very interesting exercise that I thought, this exercise I'd never seen before, and it was the elevated towel curl, and that's like one of your staple exercises, right? So I started doing elevated towel curls by myself. This was before I reached out to you, and I had some success. I was like, this is something's happening here. Back pain's going away. I thought it was all just in my head, right? Placebo, right? I'm a very skeptical person. Most strength conditioning coaches are, but I decided, you know what? I'm going to reach out to this guy, and I'm going to see, what his rates are for private coaching. So I reached out to you. I got your rates. You're not cheap, but you know what? I committed to it, and we worked together. So when I started, right, it's very different from what I feel right now. Like I feel different, and I'll try to explain it, but some of it's like almost unexplainable. So when I started, right, with you, what would you put me at in terms of like athleticism? I know you have levels, right? I'm probably level
Right.
one for sure, but so where would you say I started at?
So you started basically as a someone who's muscle driven, very muscle
Yep.
driven,
I
and
had no glute connection, by the way, in the beginning.
yeah, very little. Because when we evaluated the first session, you had very little. Because we only the assessment is very easy, right? So you stand there, and then I asked you to basically try to concentrate in your feet and try to manipulate your fascia tissue and see what the response is, and you had none in the almost
I
very
actually thought
tiny.
you were crazy. I actually thought you were crazy when you're
Right.
saying, "Oh, there was a video of you engaging your feet
Right.
out there on the internet somewhere, and the EMG is going off on the glute." I was like, this guy is just flexing his glutes. He's not has nothing to do with the feet. It's a joke." But it took me a long time. It took me probably like 8 to 10 weeks, but I understand exactly what you're talking about now, because in the beginning you would always tell me, "Hey, do you have any upstream effects? Do you have any when you engage the feet? Do you have any upstream effects to the glutes, the core?" I was like, "What do you know?" I don't. But now, like I'm doing it right now. I can just engage my feet, and there's definitely an upstream feeling on the outside of my glute, and I can feel it traveling up my leg. That's, I mean, I don't care about, randomized control trials at this point, because that's like a n equals one study. I am the study participant. If it works, then what do I have to say? I don't need, I don't need that stuff. So in the beginning, I started out as I didn't even understand, what we were doing. I was like, we're just jumping around here and curling toes. I continued with it because, one, I paid for it, but two is the towel curls I thought was doing something. I just thought, hey, I can't move my toes at all. Um, there's certain things that happened there that made me believe right off the bat. But let's fast forward a little bit. So we started working. Um, one of your cues that really helped me was the ball of the foot, like defining that, the contact point, and that was through your research and your clients and anecdotes, that you said to me that the ball of the foot is below the second toe, correct? So I always thought the ball of the foot was like the whole part of the, what most people think is the big piece, right? It's like a
Hmm.
like a oval. I was like, that's the ball of the foot. What are you talking about? Contact point. There's one giant contact point. What you then said after that really shocked me, which was, you told me, or you said somewhere, that they're the highest level athletes that you've seen, or most high level athletes that you've seen, they develop calluses on that contact point, right? That contact point that is right below the second toe on the bottom of the foot. So I was like, okay, let's see. So I went into my jiu-jitsu class and I pointed out the best athletes. I was like, you played D1 college. You ran cross country in college. Let me see your feet now. And so I looked at all these guys, and sure enough, they had a lot of the characteristics that you had already described. And so that's why in the beginning I said what your method is kind of like re-engineering athleticism. So yeah, that was maybe about week 2 or 3 when I started understanding that contact point, um, and understanding kind of how to engage the foot in a way. And that was a it was a thing that changed um, a lot of things, in my own body. So um, I would say at about week 4 and 5, so moving on, some strange stuff started happening, stuff that I did not expect to happen. I was like, this is too good to be true, or it's, some voodoo that I don't understand. But I started my lower back pain that I had for 15 years. Um, I wouldn't say disappeared, but it has gotten, I would say, 80% better and 100% manageable. And I don't know what's going on, but I do know this. I do know that my right foot, I could never, I never felt a contact point in my right foot, and I never could really curl my toes on my right foot. But now that I can, these things kind of happened, right? So, I mean, what other evidence do you need? I've done everything out there. I did yoga, I did chiro, everything. And there was just, right side lower back pain would not go away. And now I wouldn't say it's gone away, but it's 80% better, and I can manage it, meaning I can kind of, I can engage my feet a little bit. I feel like feels pretty good. Before it was like a slippery slope of, okay, today it's worse. It's going to get worse. Now I need to lay down, or I can't train. Now it's completely different. What do you think happened?
Well, it's really because well, before I didn't know any of this until the formation of the Fascia Research Society, which is an organization uh, that's formed by, I think, um, about, I think, 100 different clinicians, doctors all over the world. So in 2018, they published New York Times that fascia was, identified as a new tissue, new organ, or it was also called interstitium. Um, so these doctors, they really spend money, millions of dollars, and they have done fundamental research on what this tissue does, what are the basics, what are the cells, what are the properties. I think some people might have heard of anatomy trains, Thomas
Yep, Thomas
Myers
Myers.
talking about fascia, right? But he's talking about the fascia from a massage, uh, manual intervention type of.
Cadaver, right? He's talking from a cadaver standpoint. I'm not. I don't remember anymore. I read that book very long time ago.
Right, and he talks about the 12 fascia lines, which is very similar to what the Chinese Tai Chi's principle is talking about. There's and the meridian system, which is 12 meridian lines, and so this is something that people in the West might be aware of. And also in that organization, there's a large amount of people from the uh, Idol Rolfing Society. So that's sort of like a technique very similar to another a very ancient Chinese practice of gua sha, means scraping of the tissue. So idle rolfing, it's the rolfing technique is very similar. Use different type of metal tools to scrape the soft tissue and get rid of pain and chronic injuries, and also it has some very good effect to the movement. And I think also in that society, in that Fascia Research Society, there is the Dr. Lajavin, uh, who also spend a lot of time and money on understanding what acupuncture does to the body, what does stretching do to the body specifically, and they found out some very shocking effect, basically all related to fascia. So the reason that you are feeling better in your lumbar area, in your lower back, is really because there is a holistic effect of fascial tensioning or fascial activation that's happening. And the exercise that we're doing is very special in the sense that it might look very simple, but the underlying mechanism is completely different. And this is why, like a lot of people, they try to copy the exercise from the outside. They don't necessarily get the benefit. They're missing out like maybe 95 or 98% of the actual power of the
Yeah, I
exercise.
was. I was.
So it is the research, really the breakthrough that I have is really, you know, trying to understand what it is going on in the elite athlete's feet that made their feet look so strange. Now I understand it's actually the effect of fascial tensioning. Um, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a course of years, and obviously there's genetic predisposition to it. There's definitely genetic factors to it. However, if you are able to consciously uh, using your mind to activate your fascia, you can actually force your body to be more fascial driven. And because fascia has these properties of piezoelectric effect, um, and also uh, the elastic effect of fascia, very plastic, it can morph. Basically, your foot will morph over time, and thereby it will remember all the information and the structure that you're trying to force it to do. It will actually remember those information, and this has a holistic effect. So the reason that your back pain is getting lower and lower is because you are now activating more of your glutes, because your glutes is actually 75% fascia inserts. So there's a lot of hidden power that's not being tapped into. The traditional mainstream glutes isolation exercises, right? Like the hips thrust, right? You know, what's that guy?
A band, Brett Contreras.
Yeah, Brad Conroy is a glute guy, right? So there he has this machine where you put weights or band on the machine, and then you try to do the hips thrust, right?
Oh yeah, I did go back on my Instagram. I got that exercise. I've been doing that shit for years. You know, I'm going to be honest. It's not the. Let's just say I haven't created any super athletes doing it, and that's kind of that's an important point to make, because if you're doing something for so long and it's giving you average results or no results, it's you got to look at new things, and that's kind of what we're doing here.
Right. So that exercise, through our research, we also found out it's not doesn't really increase the fascial connection. So what it does is it isolates your hip in that position. Your your muscles will be taxed. Well, you definitely use the muscle. So it has a effect on the muscle, sure,
Right.
but it doesn't have any effect on the fascia in particular. So when we actually did the neurological the EMG test, right? So we compared the hips thrust signals with the standing fascial connection and the fascial activation signals. Those are very very different. One is the signal spikes up way longer, stronger when I'm standing and activating from my feet through the fascial connection that we build. The other one is more of a signal that just when you are at the top of the movement, you have a reading, and then that reading just goes away. That's about it. So
That
the
sounds like hip thrust.
right. That's the hip thrust. The hip thrust one is the rating just goes up, spikes up, and go away, versus the other one is more, it lasts much longer and the spike's much higher. So
Right.
there's
So it's like
there's
an
a
isometric contraction almost.
yeah, it's the vasometric contraction. So what that means, that basically kind of, for me at least, it just hit me in the head. I'm like, okay, this is what elite athletes are doing. The reason that they,
Mm.
like LeBron James and um, various different athletes, for example, LeBron,
Anderson Silva.
Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, you're talking about Liu Xiang, who's a Chinese person, but he won the Olympics in hurdling. All these people's foot, they look significantly different. Some people, they call it the Hummer toes, but they're not very different from the traditional Hummer toes, which is a pathology, creates pain and also creates limitation to movement. And this type of
Right.
fascial tensioning science actually does the exact opposite. I also had a conversation with uh, Dr. Emily Splitchell, who's an expert who is a podiatrist, and she's also very, very big on the foot training. And we share a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well in terms of, what I told you about the contact point, where they believe in the tripod system. But in hyperofascial training system, there is no tripod. The goal is to be digitigrade, meaning that your contact area and contact point will be the area along your second toe eventually. And that's the area that you will
I've
be
heard of this word before. It just means like stability, right?
digitigrade. No, it means
Yeah.
that
What does it mean?
you're using, you don't have to use the heel. You are basically on the forefoot all the time,
But you're stable in that position.
but you're very stable.
Yes.
So if you
Yes.
look at the hind legs of the dog or cats, those are digitigrade formation,
Right. Right.
right?
Animals are perfect because they haven't been industrialized, I guess. Right. So I think real quick before we lose anybody with too much getting too advanced, I think one thing that is important and something that is almost like scientific evidence as far as I'm concerned is you have on your Instagram and through your Facebook and all that, you like to post pictures of high level athletes' feet, right? And
Mhm.
they all look the same, like as in they have the same shared characteristics. So I mean that's essentially an observational study, right? If I have the pictures of 500 NBA players, and they all have these characteristics. I wrote some of them down, right? So like well, so some of them were anterior tib, right, having a activated anterior tibialis tendon. The other was extensor tendons, so the extensor tendons of the foot. So this is, you know, even something that I did a little small research in is I went and I got my jiu-jitsu students and I found the best athletes, the best jiu-jitsu guys in the room, and I looked at their feet and sure enough, they had those characteristics too. And a lot of those guys were also college athletes. So what we're doing, let's get back to my private training with you is I've never been a good athlete. Okay. I've always been what I considered a muscle driven athlete. I've always fatigued sooner than I should, in my opinion. Like I just fatigue. Um, I've always been flat footed. I thought it was genetics. But working with you, it's kind of made me think it wasn't that I was a bad athlete. It was just that, certain things didn't line up for me. And then I can still go back and retrain those things and become a better athlete if I actually put in the work properly. And this is something that I wrote down earlier. And the point I wanted to make is that, our body isn't made for performance, in my opinion. It's made for survival, right? So what'll happen is throughout modern day comfortable life, there's certain things that go away, right? Like certain, like my body doesn't care about performance or jumping high. It cares about being able to survive to the next day. So people that think, athleticism is something that you can train, maybe if you can train it right, but if you train it wrong, you actually, I think, can become a worse athlete. And I think a lot of traditional, I'm starting to believe that a lot of traditional strength conditioning done incorrectly and with people who are not able to, who are not fascial driven, you can actually make them a worse athlete. Do you think that's true?
100%, absolutely. Because I've seen firsthand myself. I mean, I wasn't born with this knowledge. I didn't have a teacher who taught me this. So I started just like anyone else. At the time when I was in my 20s, I bought almost every single fitness program or vertical jump program. I was very interested in performance because I'm a very competitive person. When I was younger, I did also do martial arts in China, in Beijing. And so um, I was very, a hardworking person. So I don't mind working hard. So I lifted weights regularly. I did, at one point I had, 2x my body weight, 2.3x my deadlift, so and pretty decent bench numbers as well. So so I pushed the limit of the body to see what I can
Mhm.
do. So I always
Mhm.
wondered, I remember back in the day there was a squat calculator. It's like how much you can squat, and this is how much you should, how how high you should be jumping, right? I was like, okay, so let me put in the work, let me find out. So I put in all that work for many many years, and I hired trainers, um, but the result was not good. What happened was, initially the result was good, and I thought, oh, this is the way. I was happy, but then what I have gained vanished after a week or two. So I know there's something going on. And then I remember specifically at one particular juncture in my life where I was just running on the basketball court, and I couldn't even run properly. And I'm like, this is not right. Something's wrong. That really prompted me to do more research, and I was very lucky because I had a friend, and I always talk about him, Peter, and he's also Chinese, and he's extremely athletic for his size of 5'9". He's just like a very lean, very long-limbed, lanky type of person. No, no, no muscle mass, and yet he was extremely athletic, extremely strong. And but the funny thing is, he lifted less than me, so I know it has nothing to do with muscle. It
Yeah,
cannot
at the
be.
combine, if you look at the NFL combine, right, the people with the biggest numbers are never the person that's drafted first because they know better, And I know that as somebody, it hurts me to say this. Honestly, it does, but I have to say it. Is that there are probably times in my life for extended periods of time where I actually trained myself in reverse, as in, and when you said some of those things, it hit me really hard because you said like you couldn't even run right on the basketball court. What happened with me was that, I used to lift every day. I thought strength conditioning was everything. And I still think it has value. But I stopped playing basketball and I stopped running altogether because it I don't even know why. It just like every time I play basketball, I sprain my ankle. Every time I run, I'm gassed out in 30 seconds. It's like so what I did was I stuck to the things that I was good at, that I enjoyed, which was jujitsu. I still get tired doing jujitsu, but I was a lot more skilled, so I could kind of, I could manipulate, the situation where I could conserve energy. So that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, yeah, you answered the question for sure. You can definitely, man, that's such a hard pill to swallow for strength conditioning coach, that you can be doing what you were taught, But if you're training the wrong athlete, the athlete that hasn't, developed their fascia, or maybe you're doing the exercises that they're not meant to do, that you could actually detrain them, or reverse their progress. And that's a really, that it gives me chills. It's a weird feeling, so yeah. And your friend, Peter, he it's a good time to talk about this. Is he doesn't understand your training, right? When you met him, he did. How could he understand? Well, how did he end up that way? How did he figure it out?
Well, like I said before, a lot of these modern day elite athletes, right? It's part genetics and part nurture. So he actually grew up in the mountains. So when he was very young, he basically just run around barefoot all day. So part of he's growing up, and this actually is part of my research as well, right? Is to understand what causes certain people to become more athletic. What is the factor in during their childhood that is most significant?
I have one
So
answer for you before you tell me the real answer. The one
sure,
answer that most strength conditioning coaches will tell you right now is that it's genetics, it's predetermined, done.
right. Yeah, I would pretty much believe that too. But then after the research and after the result, and then after we've proven our research in combat, we kind of understand a different way. Um,
This is very important. I mean, like that, just the open-mindedness to accept that, I think is important for a strength coach to understand. Because I'll be honest, I've trained people for 5+ years, and I don't know if I did that much to help their athleticism. A lot of that was natural. So yeah, please continue.
so one of the things I look at is trying to understand what happens if the foot didn't receive enough uh, neurological stimulation at a developmental stage. So meaning when we were growing up, because we're in the society where we're taught to wear the shoe.
Mhm.
So barefoot or shoelessness is considered something bad, right?
Yeah.
Something against the norm. But there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, they are barefoot due to economic conditions, social economic conditions, or due to their environment, uh, and they actually don't wear the shoe during their developmental stage, meaning from year from when they're a baby toddler to year 8 to from year 8 to year 12. So this is what I call a developmental stage. So I wanted to understand what type of effect is happening. Then I found a Nobel Prize winning research by the gentleman Wiesel, and it's called the cat experiment. Uh, I have it. So what that cat experiment tells us is that what the experiment was designed to do is they try to blind or suture. Okay, nowadays probably illegal now. They suture the kitten's eye shut. So the
Mhm.
healthy eye, right? They suture the eye shut, so the eye cannot receive any neurological stimulation from the light. So the light cannot go in there. So without the light, the neurons doesn't stimulate. Okay.
Mhm.
After a while, they open up the suture and then they test the electrode to the back of the brain, see what type of signal, what type of function does that do to the cat. And they found out that the cat's basically, even though the organ itself is healthy, because lack of stimulation during the developmental stages, the eye actually has no effect. It cannot see. It's basically blind, even though it's a healthy organ completely.
Mhm.
So if you understand that if a organ, healthy organ that's supposed to receive neurological stimulation, and it didn't receive it, or it has received a very damn amount of uh, stimulation, that organ will not develop properly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is exactly what's happening to our feet, more so than anything else. Because if you look at our living condition, look what we're doing is that the day that the baby is born, the mother would put on a shoe on the baby. Nowadays, they buy those little Nikes and then they
Yeah, yeah,
stick on the baby, right?
yeah.
They don't let the baby run around and barefoot because they think, oh, they're gonna get injured, you know.
Mm.
Um, these type of things. But then if you think about what strength conditioning is you're really progressively trying to add load to the muscles, trying to make it stronger, right?
Right.
The best time for the baby to develop is progressively loading the foot with
Mm-hmm.
proper neurological stimulation as the baby grows into a toddler, from a
Mm-hmm.
toddler to a teenager,
Plus,
right?
there's
That's also
sensors, right? There's like your feet, the bottom of your feet. You know, this is another exercise you have me do, which is roll my foot on a like a spiky ball. So that's another thing. If you're wearing shoes all day, you're not getting that neurological stimulation, right? That feedback.
exactly. So these type of the result of that experiment, plus the the what is happening to our feet today, are, for me, it's good enough to explain what's going on with our neurological development. And then you look at the elite athlete, the $1 million athlete, and their performance. We had a assumption, right? This is something that we always assume, that the people on TV, they use their feet the same way as us. That's the assumption.
Yes.
Like they use
Yes.
their foot,
They
right?
have a foot. We have a foot. It looks the same. It's got 5 toes. You know, it bends and extends, and there it is.
Right. That's the assumption, right? And then you have PhDs, doctors, all this. Their job to study that. It's not our job to understand it. We just leave that to them. We have doctors. We have millions of doctors
We
all over the
can't
world.
see. We can't see. You know, it's in the shoe. We can't, but we can see how big their muscles are, or you know how
Right.
tall they are.
Right. And we can see all that, but then we cannot see exactly what their foot is doing. So for me, the I guess the biggest riddle that I think I solved, right? I'm going to keep on, that's my work. I'm going to keep on uh, doing this work, is prove it by results, by, helping people, not just performance wise, but chronic pain. There's various effects that the foot does to the human body, right? So it's not just, okay, we can improve this person's performance, running speed, grip strength, stamina, agility, balance. Not just this, but there's other more profound effects, such as healing the injured knee, prevention of ACL, prevention of ankle sprays, and things like that.
Achilles injuries. I think you said also prevention of Achilles injuries.
Very
Let's be clear. You, your training does involve the feet, but it is not the same as anything I've ever seen. Um, I've never actually seen anybody do any of the exercises that you've like told me to do, or that you tout, except for maybe the towel curl. But nobody does the towel curl with the heel up. They all keep the heel down, and they don't talk about the things that you talk about. They're not there. It's almost like just, it's more about like grip strength or something. You know, it's like a completely different thing. And also, I wanted to touch up on something that we mentioned earlier, so I don't get any hate from the strength conditioning crowd. Is that the hip thrust, you know, the glute training stuff, Brett stuff, you know, I like Brett a lot. It's great for hypertrophy. You know, if you want a big ass, you know, great, you know, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about performance. You know, tell me those girls on Instagram doing those glute exercises. Let's see how much power they can generate. You know, how high can they jump? You know, it's probably pathetic. So we're not talking about that, right? If you want to do, hypertrophy training, if you want to do that stuff, that's a different thing. All right. I'm not interested in that kind of thing anymore. Personally, I'm a performance coach. I care about increased performance. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Don't get mad at me, Brett. Love you. So there's that's that's that. So yeah, I mean, I'm let's back to my training with you. About, I would say, halfway through, um, I would say we did the exact same exercises. You had the marble, but things were changing. Like I was
Correct.
getting better. I was before, when we were doing the hyper arc hop, which is, if you want to think about it as just plyometrics side to side, I was dead at probably 1 minute and a half. Like 1 minute and a half, I'm dead. My calves are exploding. I'm fatigued. But I think we did like, what, 5 minutes the other day, 4 minutes, something like that. And I
Yep.
didn't feel that bad. I felt pretty good. And here's some of the, again, these are anecdotes. This is experimental for me, but I believe it. Um, I never felt my glutes when we did the hyper arc hop, hopping, but probably 6 or 7 weeks into it, I started developing that feeling, and
Lucas and
more.
Josh, be quiet.
And after the training, like, say for example, jujitsu, right? Like I'll be doing jujitsu, and jujitsu is not exactly a glute, intensive exercise, right? I never felt soreness in my glutes doing jujitsu, but now recently, I just, doing, playing guard, just doing very basic moves. I don't train very hard right now because of the COVID. I'm coming home, and the next day my glutes are sore, and I'm like, what is happening here? This is not like, I've done 500-pound hip thrust, and my glutes didn't feel like this. This is very strange. It's also not a normal soreness. It's like a different soreness too. It's like a not muscular anymore. So like, what is happening there? Am I developing the connection from the feet to the glutes? Because you talk about that a lot.
Right. Yeah. So this is where I challenge a lot of mainstream theories. How the muscle really contracts. Why uh, sliding filament theory is wrong. Because you cannot, if the theory is correct, then what we're doing today should not happen.
I still don't understand it, by the way. Just to I've taken anatomy like 4 times. Still don't get it, but yeah.
Right. Because what that theory really lacks, the it really lacks is basically, it says, okay, muscle, that's it. But they don't understand, okay, muscle, then you have a layer of fascia, then you have a layer of muscle again, and then you have a layer of fascia again, and then you have so it's layer upon layers of fascia, muscle, fascia, muscle, fascia, muscle. So the theory of sliding filament does not describe any of that. He
There's no
only talk,
fascia in that.
there's no fascia involved. So if you have basically you had a one layer dynamic, the theory only describe one layer, and the human body is multi-layered. You're trying to use one layer to address problem that's happening on a multi-layer plane. It's not going to work. So the human body, just like our reality, our world is also multi-layer. It's not just one layer. And this is also perhaps some of our scientific work are pretty much stuck, or physics pretty much stuck for a number of years, because we always try to assume there's only one layer, which is the layer that we can see, but there's actually multiple layers that we cannot see that also play a significant role to the reality that we're in today.
That you touched on something that, I don't want to go onto a tangent about this, but that what you described is actually like a broad problem in the world, and especially in strength conditioning, is thinking that things are like black and white. Nuance is lost. Complexity is lost. And yeah, I'm going to call some people out, actually. So I used to be pretty big into the pain science crowd. You know, there's a pain science community of people. These are all people that are like 50, 60, 70 years old. And, you know, I was part of this community, as in I was just a person in a Facebook group, and I would ask questions. You know, I would ask questions like, hey, you know, what about this method? What about DNS? What about, you know, X, Y, and Z? And a lot of these people close the door on that, you know, before that conversation even started. And I don't want strength conditioning coaches to ever think like that. You know, when you think that everything's black and white, like, you know, you need a randomized controlled trial, or you need a meta-analysis, or it's all bullshit. That's not, you know, I used to think like that 10 years ago. You know, I used to think like that. I used to think, if you would have presented your method to me 10 years ago, I would have not accepted it. And I would have probably just dismissed it, and I would have missed out on a lot. And that would have been, you know, a mistake. So I think, you know, that what you described is like a broad it's beyond just like, you know, the sliding filament theory and fascia. It's like a human problem, you know, is missing the forest for the trees, right? Basically, this is what it is, you know. So let's go back to my training again. Let's finish this story off. So after about the halfway point is when I started really getting soreness in my glutes. So now, right now, if I do jiu-jitsu for an hour, I'm going to be sore in my glutes. I don't even know why, but you've described it. And then one other thing that you say is the next level, right? Is I started at level 1. Maybe, am I level 2 now? Am I close to level 2? Am I 1.5?
No, so if you are remember if we go back to our old test, just standing there, you activate your fascia in the foot, right? If you can feel your glutes engage, right? There's a level of engagement you can have. And if your glutes start to get really, really hard, but not concentrating on your glutes, just from your feet, then you have reached level 2, level 3.
I think I'm close to level 2. So what I do is I push how I can get glute engagement without thinking about glutes, without activating glutes, is I push that contact point hard into the ground. Is that how you would cue it externally? Like how you would tell an athlete to do it?
That could work, or they just focus on their arc.
Focus on the arch.
That could also work.
So focusing on the arch does work for me, but it's blurry. You know, for me, when you say focusing on the arch, I'm like, I kind of understand and things are moving. But when I push that ball, the foot down, it's not blurry. It's very clear. I understand exactly what it means. And that's when I get the most glute engagement. And part of me actually thinks that by just changing the contact point on my foot. So, you know, on my right foot, what I suspect was happening was I was walking and my whole foot was just like a pillow hitting the ground. You know, it was just dispersing energy, you know, and now it's not, you know, perfect, but it's better. I'm now walking on a contact point. You know, a lot of pain has gone away. I'm a little more athletic, I would say. I haven't lifted a weight in like, you know, 5-6 months, but I'm in, you know, I'm in the jiu-jitsu room, you know, I'm killing everybody with strength. And that makes, you know, not a lot of sense. But it does, because I'm doing your training. It's the only thing I've done, and just very minor jiu-jitsu. So I feel incredibly strong, right? So there's like this thing that it's always perplexed me is, and you've touched on it, and I want you to talk about this, is the skinny, wiry athletes, right, are the ones that are more fascial driven much of the time. People like Anderson Silva. We talked about Marina Rodriguez last weekend. She got a big win, huge underdog, big win. We talked about you know, just like people like Kobe, you know, the people that are just, they look skinny, right? They doesn't look like they can. Allen Iverson. Tell me all the most famous examples. Let's hear all of them.
Well, I think in BJJ, the founder of
Hoist Gracie.
right?
It's Hoist Gracie. Why didn't I think of that? Hoist Gracie. And
Yeah.
also Gordon Ryan, when he started his career before, the growth spark, he was very skinny. He looked like Hoist Gracie, actually. He was a skinny, and he was destroying people. When there's a famous event that Gordon did, EBIs, one of the EBIs, where he was a nobody purple belt, just a skinny purple belt, destroyed world champions in this tournament, took the gold, and that was the beginning of his introduction to the world, and his career has been on a rocket since then. And this was, you talk about Iverson, Gordon Ryan, Hoist Gracie. That's a great example. I never really thought about Hoist Gracie. You know, um, so what is that? That what is that? Why is it that the muscle bound guy is usually not also fascial driven?
So yeah, so this also ties to what I said earlier, which is, there's definitely genetic component to this. So it's not okay. We cannot
We can
change
still
your
get lucky. We can still get lucky.
right.
Yeah.
You can definitely be born with more fascial tissue in the foot, in the ankle area for sure. And you can be born with a little bit more fascial tissue than others, just like some people can born with a little bit more muscle tissue, right? So this is all possible. And and but see, the part I want to make distinction is that don't think that if this guy is bigger framed, that he cannot be fascial driven, or this guy
Right.
look muscular, so that means he's not fascial driven. This is false. Okay.
Right.
So the look on the physical appearance alone does not determine if the person is fascial driven or not. What determines a fascial if the person is fascial driven really depends on how much the fascial connection from the feet to the glutes and
Mm-hmm.
to the abs. This is what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, something internal. So a fascial driven athlete can be any size, any shape, and any ethnicity. There is no discrimination in that sense. So you can have fascial driven athlete in any race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my point was just that it's really looking at the outliers, right? It's like if you look at, let's say, the UFC, right? John Jones is probably would you consider him a very high level fascia driven athlete, right?
Yeah,
You would,
right. I would. The
right?
thing is with I think a lot of people, like when I talk to my followers, right?
Mhm.
Uh these are the people that believe in my work. I always tell them those people are willing to listen. I tell them, right? This is again the message that I'm saying. It does not apply to everybody, and you don't have
Right.
to necessarily agree with me. Just just understand this is something I tell people is that the reason I tell people not to train with weights because I have walked down that path and it didn't work for me until I realized that there is another path, and I walked down the other path for
Yeah,
seven
this is
years.
important. I want you to be as polarizing as possible. You can't hurt my feelings. Nothing is going to embarrass me or hurt my feelings. That's the one superpower that I have, is I'm immune to embarrassment or, saying that I was wrong. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, it's really not about what's right or wrong. It's really about people's experience, how we can benefit from each other's experience. So so I realized there is another path, and I explored that path many years, 7 years. And what I found out at the end of that path is something incredible, which is the message I want to tell the world, that there is such thing called fascial fitness, which is completely functional. This is not something, okay, go to a massage, they're massaging your tissue. No, this is 100% performance based, 100% health based, 100% functional based, 100% power based. This is something that people were trying to look for. They were trying to. I mean, back in the days in the ancient China, they probably wrote a little secret book somewhere, and then they were hiding from everybody. This
Yeah.
is that type of information, and my conclusion is that the high level athlete that we're seeing today across all fields of athletics, not just basketball, not just MMA, not just tennis, not golf, not just golf, any sport at the top level, all these guys are fascial driven.
Yeah.
There's even at Division 1 level, all these guys glutes functionally has more connection to the feet than anyone else. How do I
They're
know?
all glute dominant athletes. How do you know?
Right. How do I know? Because I produced in our local tri-state area a Division 1 basketball athlete from age 13. 5 years later, got to Division 1, and he's right now he's gonna make a name for himself.
So the obvious question here would be, okay, what about somebody who wasn't fascia driven and tried to make it to the NBA with all their effort? What would happen to them?
This is our story too, right? So the kid that I helped before had chronic knee pain. No doctors can help him at the time. Just tell him, you either cut down your load, wear a brace, do the strength training. He done all that. It didn't help, and it was the last resort. At that time, I was raw, right? I was new too. I was like, okay, coach, because I was a coach with another coach, shooting coach, and we debated on the shooting accuracy part. So he believed in my work, and he said, I got a perfect candidate for you. I got this kid name is Mark. I know his dad also basketball coach, right? He has potential. His dad is tall, 6'4". He could have potential, but right now he has bad knees, very bad knees. Okay, he cannot even run. Work on. Can you help him? I said, perfect. That's my candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Got to work with him. 2 months later, no more knee pain. Never came back. What the irony of the story is? He of course he initially started very bad, just average, right? Like anybody else, because he had knee pain, he cannot perform. He was sitting on the bench, right? And the starter torn his ACL.
Mm-hmm.
So now he got the chance to play, and when he
Mm-hmm.
played, he destroyed everybody.
Yeah,
And
it's like the story of Tom Brady.
yeah, and then he's like, so then the coach is like, make no sense now. No, I see how you can produce. You'll be a starter. So he basically took over the job and took over the school, and he actually grew to a height of 6'8".
Mm. So yeah, that was so I guess what it sounds like to me is that the people who are trying to make it to the highest level, you say that they're all fascial driven, they're all glute dominant athletes. The people that either figure it out by adapting, or they're probably not going to find you if in this short period of time, but they're either gonna their body is going to adapt, or they're going to get injured, or things are going to break down before they get there, right? That's a very plausible explanation that I think, I don't want to make excuses, but I'm about to make an excuse right now. I felt that my sporting career was limited by my body, and it was just if I pushed it past a certain point, red line, I couldn't do it. But I would look around and I would see, how's this guy is pushing it red line. And of course this guy went to the guy next to me would go to D1 college, and I played at community college. So it's a big difference. I noticed very quickly that I was not able to redline my body, as in I couldn't take it to the highest gear, or else I would never recover. Like I did it once in a football game, and I just went all out on the first 30 plays, and I basically had to be taken out of the game. I was completely dead. But then I remember this just watching tape, and I was like, man, you guys are all, a lot of people were running, much faster than me, and how are you guys able? And I'm training just, we're moving the same weight in the weight room. Practice is pretty much the same, but once we get out into the environment of it's real time, I just didn't have a gear like that. And it happened in my MMA career too. I just did one amateur fight and I called it quits because it just seemed like my training did not translate into the same kind of training. And again, it's an excuse, but I felt that there were certain, what I blamed was genetics. I was like, man,
Right.
I'm a bad motor learner and I can't do it. And now I don't have that excuse anymore. It's like I figured something out. And when you talk about the shooting stuff, so we've had these conversations where you say that because somebody is a fascia driven athlete, their accuracy and their precision goes up, like Steph Curry, for example. How is this guy shooting, half court shot with that kind of precision, and just to speak on it, I feel, I haven't played basketball in 10 years, but right now I feel that if I were to shoot, I feel pretty accurate. Like I'm looking at where the net would be. I feel pretty accurate. And this is, old me would be like, all right, I'm going to throw this thing over the backboard for sure, And so what is it with people like Harden, James Harden, Steph Curry, anybody in the NBA that's launching threes, on their butt, sitting on their butt half court? I can't even throw the ball 30 feet. My old me couldn't throw the ball 30 feet. These guys are shooting, 50 feet on their butt. What are they doing?
Okay. So here is another, I guess, kind of shocking kind of message to the sports community, right? So the reason that we say muscle driven and fascial driven, we first have to understand how they work together in unison. What's the relationship? When we say fascia muscle driven, it's really the muscles are sliding against each other, where fascia pretty much stays where they are. When we talk about fascia driven, we are actually talking about fascia sliding. And how do you see this fascia sliding? The only tool that we have currently is the ultrasound. MRI is not going to see it. X-ray is not going to see it. Any other radiology is not going to see it, but ultrasound can. You can
Hmm.
see the underlying layers of fascia slide in real life. So vivo study, you can see it. So again, without any third party paper, again, we're trying to get everything done, right? I'm working with people
Mhm.
in universities trying to study this, but until we have the actual data, right now what I say is theory, right? You can go out there and prove it yourselves if you have the
Yeah.
funds to do so. I welcome that, and I welcome you reach out to me and we can work on together. Is that when you have a fascial driven system, is that the fascial when you move, it's actually the fascia slide, and then the fascia will then cause the muscle to contract.
Hmm.
Okay,
So you can generate force in a different way than what
in a
than
different
we.
way.
Yeah.
It's in a completely different way. And if you are able to make your fascia a contractile, a primary contractile tissue, what that means is that you could bypass some of the checks. For example, the Golgi complex organ, which controls how much
And that's
force
the
you move.
goal. That's the goal to get there, right? Is to use your fascia as opposed to primarily muscle.
Correct. The goal is to make the body more fascial driven, right? So that's why you can have two exact build, exact weight, everything exact person, but one person is going to be very dominant. The other person, even though can lift the same amount, cannot perform down the road. And another part of this is the cell, the actual cell of the fascia. We know today, right? 2021, we know there's two type of cells. There is the fibroblast, which is the basic building block of fascia. The fibroblasts, through proper mechanical force, can be converted into myofibroblasts. And this myofibroblast tissue is actually determined today, right? We don't know what's going to be happening down the road in the research today, 2021, to be twice as strong as the original fibroblast cells. So imagine you have your glutes. Your glutes is 75% fascia, okay? Once you go from maybe 10% to 70%, that's how much amount of power you have increased, right? Now, those 75% change from myofibroblast to fibroblast. Fibroblast to myofibroblast. That's all another 2x. So this is like in terms of mathematical formula, you can calculate how much potential a person has just going from being a muscular driven person to a fascia driven person.
Yeah, it's like what I'm hearing is basically like if you're doing fascia training, you're creating exponential change, and when you're doing muscular training, you're essentially just changing one thing. Then that one thing may actually not be good for performance. It's good for what it is you're doing. Like if my goal is you know, powerlifting, I probably have to get under the bar and power lift, right? That's you know, part of the sport. You know, you can't take that away. But like here's something that you know is, again, I'm not, I haven't formulated a clear thought on this. You know, we're still working together. You know, we're doing another 12 weeks, you know, in a couple of weeks. So I'm still kind of formulating my thoughts on this. Is that why is it then that every sport does strength conditioning in kind of the same way if sports are all not really the same, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to say they're all done the same way, but generally, football players, basketball players, soccer, we're all doing deadlifts, right? Like everybody's doing like kind of the same shit. And so that's the thing is why are we doing that? You know, why is it like if deadlifts and squats and bench press and all these things was going to translate to performance on the athletic field, then why isn't there more evidence of that? You know, like there is evidence, but I don't I don't see it with my eyes, and I don't think there is any good evidence. You know, like you said, like we said earlier about the combine numbers. You know, Brock Lesnar's combine numbers were out of this world. You know, like he should be the number one draft pick, but he goes onto the football field. He doesn't make it onto the starting team. You know, he's on the practice squad. He has more muscle than anybody. Okay. He has more bench press numbers than anybody. Why is this guy not there? And then you see somebody like Jadeveon Clowney, right? And the guy who I would consider is more looks like a John Jones type of guy, you know, like a smaller, wiry, but man, this guy can play. You know, he can play. You look at a lot of the big name defensive ends. Defensive ends are probably the most explosive freak athletes in the world, and a lot of them are not like, you know, big and muscular. They have muscle, but a lot of them are wiry-ish looking with some muscle. It's not a bodybuilder, right? Why
No.
wouldn't the best player be a bodybuilder if muscle was what it's all about? So these are kind of things that I think about, you know, and I think about. I haven't formulated my final thoughts on it, but definitely working with you, I feel like I need to change my strength conditioning approach a bit. I need to at least experiment with other things. And yeah, let's. How much time you got, Coach? You good on time?
I'm good on time. I can do another 30.
Okay, let's do it. So we're almost done. You know, let's finish off with my story. You know, probably like around week 10, week 11, we started building up my endurance to the hyper arc hop. You know, I'm getting a lot more upstream effect. I just feel, you know, different. You know, it's a different thing. You know, my grip strength went up. I don't know why. And you let's talk real quick about some of the athletes you work with, right? So you work with Overeem, right? How's that going?
It's going very, very well. Actually, he's, first of all, he's 40 years old, right? I think a lot of people, uh,
That's
you
old
don't,
as fuck for an MMA fighter, by the way. An
you're
MMA
right.
fighter, that's very
They,
old.
right. They don't go for people who are older. But for our training, we don't really mind because we work on the fascia, not the muscle. Fascia can be trained at any age. Uh, it's going quite well, and he actually told me that he wins uh, actually all his sparring matches. So we're going in very strong for this fight. We only had 8 weeks of training. We meet once a week. He gets homework. Um, so it's a limited schedule. It's not a full 12 weeks. So as you can expect with your own experience with 8 weeks of results compared to your 12-week, there is still
The
significant
difference.
difference,
Yeah.
right? So we'll see. We'll see how he goes, and we'll know in real life, right? Combat. And the other athlete I work is with is Zhang Weili, who's the current UFC champion in women's strawweight division. We worked for a long time, very long time, almost 2 years. We started 3 months before the Jessica Andrade fight. That's when I first got to work with her. In the beginning, she had an injury to the toe, so it was also good because my expertise helped with that as well. So we're able to build it up and prevent that type of injury from happening. And then from there, we just kept on improving. And of course, there was a lot of in the beginning. Of course, there's a lot of questions, just like you, very
Oh,
skeptical.
I
I think
got I got a lot of questions. I'm gonna ask every question.
right. So just like everybody in the beginning asks a lot of questions and trying to understand how it works because everything looked just too good to be true,
Yes.
and it looks too simple. People looking for,
Yep.
oh, I want to do some complex things. I usually tell them we're going to do that later. We build on the foundation first. But once we build out the foundation, once they start to feel it after 12 weeks, they understand what we're doing because now they have substance in their body, something that they can identify with. So it's not a figment of imagination or somebody else's words. So they understand, oh, now I have developed a connection in my glutes. This is something that I never had before,
That's where I am right now too.
right? So once you have that, you planted the seed. You actually basically, like the Matrix, you took the pill, you
Right.
actually ate it, and then you start to see things that
I'm
you
still
never.
chewing on I'm still chewing on that pill right now. But yeah,
Right,
I'm almost there. Still chewing on it.
right. So now you're like, okay, I'm seeing things now. This is was the way I see athlete before. Now I see something different. But as you go through this journey, right? As you go through this journey, which varies from people to people, because everyone, I don't think the neurological adaptation speed is the same, and also everyone is disposed to, if you're fascia driven. Like for example, when I work with Zhang Weili, actually took us longer than when I worked with uh, Overeem. Like he actually, I would say he accelerated around week 6. There was one week I didn't like the result. Like he always like tell me like jokingly like why you don't smile. Well, because we haven't got there yet. So I have nothing to be happy about, right? So then all of a sudden, I think it was week 7. I saw the result and I started to smile. And he's like, "Oh, so you're happy now?" I
Is
said,
that
"Yeah."
is there is that something you can tell us exactly what you saw? Is it, without giving away anything?
Right. It's just how effortless he execute the movement instructions, right? So for example, in the hyper hop, how effortless can you do them? There, a person
Right.
who's muscle driven, when they do the hop, it's very different. They use,
Yeah.
first of all, their neurological recruitment pattern will be off. They will be using their quad, they will be using their lower back even, and then the ankle stiffness is not there. Uh, when we when we when what I saw in Overeem is that it was very effortless. the after effect, I mean, without the EMG, and we can use the EMG if we want, but without the EMG, from his feedback, it was a 9 or 10 in the glutes and like 2 in the calves.
I'm
So that
excited. I'm definitely betting Overeem now. I was gonna bet him anyway, but he's an underdog. I'm definitely betting him now. But yeah, I think you guys got to a 9 or 10, man. Like you're saying a lot of this, and a lot of that makes a lot of sense to me because I went through it. And I think, I want to end off with some jiu-jitsu questions, but definitely for strength conditioning coaches, it's hard for me to like, because I know how some strength conditioning coaches are. A lot of these people are my friends, and a lot of these people, I have to just tell them, look, don't uh don't dismiss it unless you've given it a shot. Because it's almost like I'm talking to myself from, let's say, 5-10 years ago. My old self 10 years ago, I wouldn't even have tried what you're doing because I would have looked at it and been like, what in the world? Like, I just come on, deadlifts and squats, get out of here. So like that's kind of old me, right? So I just, the whole idea of taking accountability, putting skin in the game, I think is what made me have buy-in, and then belief, right? Belief in your method. And I'm not a blind, cult member. I'm very against like blind loyalty. I always look for reasons, and why I'm still training with you, and I want to get your message out, is because every time I've asked you a question, you didn't make it more complex than my question. You're concise with what you're answering, and also your exercises didn't get more complex. Maybe they will get more complex, but they're never complex to the point where it's like you have to memorize stuff. It's like you have to memorize,
no.
so that right there is like is almost like a testimonial, right? It's like I always see things as, if you can't explain it in a simple manner, you don't understand it, right? That's how I see things. And if your method is way more complex than it needs to be, then you're probably trying to sell me snake oil, probably charlatan. That's what charlatans do, is make things so complex that it doesn't make sense. So, but your stuff, it gets simpler, and it gets easier, and it gets less complex. So that's just my message to strength conditioning coaches who for sure are going to listen to this and say, Ben, you've gone crazy. You've gone crazy. Squats and deadlifts, bench press. We do sprinting. What are you doing? For
Okay.
sure. So
Yeah.
anyway, just
Yeah.
I had to get that out there.
Right. I mean, you're not alone, right? So
No,
besides the strength coach community, there's a lot of other people. Like for example,
runners.
right, runners, and a lot of people, they like even they suffer a ACL injury. I have this guy, right? This is a true story. He came onto my page and said, I just that I work with blah 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 professor blah blah blah, who is the expert in knee in sports medicine, right? I just done a PhD dissertation, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
20 pages on the ACL. I myself just suffered the ACL injury, and I use their method. I'm like the top 10% of that method. And what you're saying is too good to be true, and I don't believe it. I want to see the research,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fair enough. I mean, I told him, like, right now, if I have funding, I'm gonna get it done. I'm working with people to get it done. So, but in the meantime, I have to pay for my mortgage. I'm helping athletes. We have champion to win, right? I'm delivering results. So I'm not here to debate with you. That's not my mission, right? My mission is to help those that who wants to be helped get the results, right? That's my
Mm-hmm.
goal, right? Obviously, just like religion, right? Or religion, bad example. Just different brand of cars, let's say,
Yeah.
right? You
Okay.
can you can you can you can like Maserati and you can like Bentley, right? So there's a different brand of different ways of building your car. How you want to
Yep.
build it, right? You can use different method, but Until we I think as a humanity move to a stage that we can understand the impact of this work, then we're always going to be arguing. And like, even like today, right? You see LeBron James. What
Mhm.
does he do anything wrong? How many people hate him? How many people dislike him?
Oh,
There's
I was
plenty.
killing his squat video like 5 years ago, but you
Right.
told me let's talk about that real quick. So there's a LeBron James posted a squat video maybe like I don't know maybe 3 5 years ago, I don't remember, but he had a video of him squatting and he was going down like maybe 1/4 of the way maybe, and the comments were all just LeBron needs to hire a real coach. He doesn't know how to squat. His terrible form, blah blah blah. And I won't say that I was big on the piling on of that, but I definitely saw that and was like, man, that's a bad squat for power lifter. So what would you say about that squat?
So okay, so the squat, right? So that squat is actually for me, as I know, because of how the fascia works, how it connects to the glutes, it's fine for him because he actually don't need to squat that low in order to engage his glutes. So remember we talk about standing to use our
Mm-hmm.
glutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can he can basically do maybe even less than that, even
Yeah,
like
he's
one
down
fifth,
here. He's down here in the one quarter, one
one
fifth. He's
fourth,
here in
what,
the glutes.
right?
So
He's
he's
able,
activating the right muscles.
correct. If you insert a EMG in there, you can have tremendous reading. He's already
Mm-hmm.
using it. So he doesn't need to have the need to bend all the way down. This is also why NBA athletes have a very shallow type of dip when they go up, because that really comes from fascial activation. They can use their core and the glutes together without a very deep bend. Now, the people who have weaker fascial connection, in order for them to feel the glutes, yes, you have to go much lower.
You know what's crazy is that what you just talked about, people that train basketball players, I've trained many basketball players, and I know a lot of strength conditioning coaches that specialize in basketball players. They figured out what you just said, except they didn't know why. Because I've heard so many basketball coaches say, oh, we only squat to quarter depth because why? Because we don't ever need to go lower than that. We don't ever go. So they figured it out through observation, but not through like what it's more of an internal fascia thing that they don't know this, but they know from what they see. And that's kind of, man, it's so crazy. Like a lot of these things, as a strength coach, it validates old things in my head that either I saw or I saw like a really really knowledgeable mentor told me, and I just dismissed because there was I thought I knew everything. Mike Boyle used to say be big on single leg stability. He was big on single leg stability. I remember like single leg RDL, single leg lunges, all that stuff, and I was like, man, this guy, what are you talking about? Like squats and deadlifts. But he made it such a point, and then he was a strength conditioning coach when the Red Sox won the World Series. Like who am I to say? And I remember at that time I was like, yeah, Mike Boyle got lucky. He didn't know what he's talking about. Like these are all things. If you're a real strength coach and you really work in the field, a lot of these things that you talk about, coach, is eh, strength coaches should listen to it and have epiphanies like you know oh that now there's a connection that this is that it's called bridging the gap. This is a big gap of knowledge and you just bridged it. And I'm very careful here because I understand confirmation bias can happen easily, especially because I'm invested, I've bought in, I've paid for your program, but I've made every I'm very nice when I'm talking to you, but when we're not talking, I'm thinking of ways to stump you. Trust me. Because it's good. If I could find a way to maybe something you don't know, it'll help you too. It'll and I know who you are. I know you're an open-minded person. You wouldn't take that personally, just like I wouldn't take it personally. And that's rare. That's a rare quality, and that's one of the reasons why I gravitated myself toward you. Most people I don't listen to, man. I don't listen to them because I'm an autodidact just like you. I what it means is we learn, we teach ourselves. So it's like I teach myself everything. So for me to actually listen to somebody, it takes a lot. So yeah, let me just ask you one more question about jujitsu, and then we'll wrap it up. So this is a podcast that is pretty much marketed to the jiu-jitsu community, the jiu-jitsu mag YouTube and the jiu-jitsu mag podcast network. It's all a lot of jiu-jitsu people. What I've found doing your method and doing some of the fascia training with you is that my motor learning and my jiu-jitsu has gone up. And it's not that my skill has gone up, but indirectly my skill has gone up because I'm able to see things and do it a lot easier now. Whereas before I was a little clunkier. And I notice now that my best students are the ones that are fascial movers because they're also the ones that when I show them a move, they can replicate it. Just they can just replicate it, and I always called that talent. I call that talent, motor learning talent, but maybe they just have advanced fascial fitness. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's also my observation from this research and work as well. Is that because I haven't worked with BJJ student directly, but I have worked with many other athletes,
You have
and
now.
yeah, and one of them is like I would say is what started off very uh, uncoordinated. We're talking about the simplest movement cannot do.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like people. I have these people in my jiu-jitsu class. God bless them, but I it's like put the knee right there, and they cannot do it. I have to pick them up and put them into place.
Right. And then they think they're, but the crazy thing is that their mind thinks that they are doing exactly what you're doing. And they are also thinking that in their mind that they look like you, but their body actually look completely different when they execute the movement. And we had people like that before doing this 7-year journey. And after 1 year, I've seen that their biomechanic completely change, and that just blew me away because what we did not do any type of weightlifting, right? We did not do any of that. We did not we did not do any type of hard uh movement type of drills either. We only stick to the fascial training regimen.
Mm.
And of course, people are gonna say, "Oh, because you're the founder of HFT, so you say this." But you can welcome to try it out and see for yourself. That's all.
I
That's
I
all I can
just
say.
I just did. So I will be a I guess a validator of that. I was one of the people, and I probably still am one of the people, but I've gotten much better. Is that even though I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I have pretty good movement pattern. When I go to somebody else's class, I have no problem admitting this. When I go to somebody else's class, another black belt, famous teacher or something, and they show a move and it's a little bit, you know, intricate. I cannot recreate it on first try. I'm clunky. I'm moving around. It's weird. But then there are people out there who can not only replicate it on first try, they can do it as good as the person that showed it. And there are people that can do it better than the person that showed it. And I've had people do this to me. I show a move, my student gets me in the move when we're training later that day. I'm like, this is impossible. No way you can do this, because my my thought was that I couldn't do it. So if I can't do it and you can do it, you must be talented. And that's my thought. I never thought, oh, it's fascia. It's something that I can actually control, something that I can actually train. I can be better than you at. And that's a very, let's just forget about truth right now. Let's just say that is, even by having that idea in my head, it's a motivating thing for me to train harder and to be better. And so that for jujitsu people, just having the knowledge that that can be done is that no, you don't always have to be the plodding mover, and you can train this and you can be better. Getting better doesn't necessarily mean doing the same thing that you're doing. Like, I know people who do jujitsu every day, but they still move terribly. And as they continue to do jujitsu, they continue to move terribly. And there's nothing I can do to fix that, except maybe have them do the same movement over and over and over and over again. But then as soon as they go to a new movement, all of the old bad habits, they come back. And I always called that, lack of athleticism, lack of uh, movement talent, lack of motor learning talent. But what they really lacked was probably fascial fitness, right? Do you think that's plausible?
Yeah, I think definitely play a contributing factor to it. I think the one part I didn't mention about fascia is the principle of fascia is called tensegrity, and this is the term that has a very profound meaning, because tensegrity models are not, you know, uh, break on top of breaks. This is man-made structures. They're break on top of break in a stacking manner. A tensegrity model is something it's held by strings of tension, and it can suspend. Like I think you can get you can go online, go to Lego, you can buy like one of these tensegrity model Legos, and you can see it's kind of unbelievable where one Lego is suspended via
Mm,
strings, and yet there looks like they're levitating.
mm,
So this structure is also the same structure that NASA uses to build its robot to land on different planet. Instead of just okay have the traditional robot which has a roller, right? They actually now leaning towards building tensegrity based robots so that when it can land, it can deform, absorb the force, and then transform itself without losing the tensegrity, without compromising its functions. In reality, our body and the the animals of this world all have this fascia tensegrity in their body, and because our modern day living, this tensegrity function of the fascia has been compromised from a very early age. Like if you imagine, like try to remember when you were a young kid, right? How easy our movements were. It was never struggling. And if you actually you that effortless develop properly, you can be a good athlete, right? Because still
yeah.
effortless.
Weirdly enough, like when I was in 10th grade, I was a great shooter. Like, I would make every three. People, I would score in 30 points a game. I was most improved player in the Boys and Girls Club. And then the next year, I won the most valuable player. I don't even know what happened, but I was incredibly accurate, right? And then when I got to high school, it went away. Like, this accuracy went away. It was now forced. It was now like the ball was heavier. I don't know. Something happened, and I ended up never even playing seriously. I thought I played every day. I was like, I'm getting better. No, I'm not getting better. So yeah, there's definitely what you said about tensegrity. I think it's taken me a while to process, understand, but I do understand it now. It's like something that's held up by strings that's all connected holistically, right? That's essentially what you're saying. And that makes
Right.
a lot of sense, because that's not how most people think about their body, right? They think, your foot's your foot, your hand's your hand, but if you create, like I'm doing it right now, I'm creating fascial tension in my right foot, and it's giving me a kind of a feeling of like I'm just it's like winding up a like a jack in the box, or winding up something, and I feel like I could explode out of this chair at any moment. I could if I want to touch that, I'm going to touch it at the exact same spot. I don't know. It's a strange feeling, and that's why I said earlier, I feel like if I were to take jump shots, I just feel it's more accurate. It's something with the control. It's like my motor control after 12 weeks has gone up, and I'm excited to see.
Proprioception.
Proprioception, there it is.
Yeah.
We learn about proprioception as a trainer, but it never goes beyond, what it is. They don't really go past defining it. Proprioception is traditionally defined as, awareness in three-dimensional space without using your eyes. So like knowing where things are. And I would even say, I feel like I know where things are more with my eyes closed. It's a very, very weird phenomenon. And, you know, without sounding, like I'm confirmation bias, it's just something that I think people need to try. And I think that people need to just try what is the best way to get started. Because I know working with you one-on-one is not going to be feasible for a lot of people. Do you have anything that people can point people to?
Yeah. So I have a website, and it's redesigned. It has basically video course in, three different tiers, and they offer the assistance and community support to people who need this type of training for various reasons. I think my biggest fans are the people who really worked hard for many years and who are stuck and who have pain because of the hard work they have done. It's not their fault because they have been misdirected or they have been working on the wrong things. So this is basically my group of people, and there are many people like this, um, from all different type of life and different type of profession and different type of sports background, and we basically join them together and try to help them.
So what is the so I know you have an Instagram. It's pretty you're pretty active. It's what is it again? Secret of Athleticism. Is that right?
Yep, secret of athleticism.
So there's no
Yeah,
S. There's no S in the secret. It's just secret, not secrets.
right. There
Just
is only
secret.
one. There is
Right.
no multiple. Right. Like
There's
people
only
think,
one secret.
right.
All
Um,
right. So Secret of Athleticism on Instagram. Your website was the same, right? Secret.
right. It's a secret of athleticism, or just Google hyperfascial training.
Yeah.
That works as well. Uh, I run ad on Google, so if you say, "Oh, I have back pain," you might see my ad as well.
Oh yeah, I've seen it a couple times. I see your ad all the time because I'm probably Googling back pain too much, or I search for too many things about back pain. But yeah, the ad is with the Weili jumping, doing the hyper arc hop, right? So just like for people that we'll sign off on this. People that see that side to side hop that Weili is doing, there's a lot of nuance to that hop, man. Like I was just jumping side to side thinking it's plyometrics. It is not the same. There's like so many cues. Can you give people maybe a couple of those cues right now before we sign off here?
Yeah, so it's a matter of how good your fascial activation is in your ankles and in your foot. And this activation in your ankles and your foot is not just a localized activation. This is actually a catalyst, a neurological catalyst. So many people don't understand that, so they misinterpret it.
Mhm.
And because the body works holistically, right? Even if you can copy the outside that looks
Mhm.
the same as what we're doing,
Mhm.
because lack of the mechanism, which I identify as the hyperarc mechanism, it will not work.
Yeah. So I
So,
guess one thing I could
so
say is if you don't engage your feet, it ain't gonna work. And how are you gonna engage your feet? You have to sign up to the program.
right, and you have to build that connection up. You need to build the mental connection to the body, right? So right now we're building some. We're not there yet. There is also later on down the road, which soon you will find out in our next 12 weeks, that we're going to do some uh, meditation exercises that will enhance that connection even more. So it's I would say, like, how do you even, I would say this is if people who like meditation as part of their fitness regimen, they're gonna like this, because we're building a tremendous amount of mental to body, mind to body connection. And this is not just a metaphysical kind of connection. This is the real, that means you can kick somebody's ass type of connection, so it's
Hmm.
in that sense is a little different. But
I do not necessarily like meditation, but if you're going to tell me it's going to increase my performance, I'll meditate for 10 hours.
yeah, we're not gonna do, because the goal of the training is really take what the 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 very old traditional martial arts and bring it, simplify it, bring it into modern day life, simplify it, and make it acceptable, right? Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to do many hours of meditation, but even like 3 to 5 minutes of mental concentration and awareness
Mhm.
would dramatically make a difference in number of weeks.
Yeah, that's mind muscle connection too, is from bodybuilding. I remember many. So, probably has benefits to hypertrophy as well.
Yeah, I think there was a very famous experiment, right? So people stuck at home, they couldn't do the weights. They don't have the weights, but they were asked to imagine that they were lifting weights,
Yeah.
and they found out the same effect
Yeah, it
in the
was like a
muscle.
broken arm or something. Somebody had a broken arm, or they did a study with people with broken, arm. They couldn't move that limb, but they did like 5 minutes of. I don't remember the study, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. So, I think let's put it this way: in 12 weeks, I've probably made more progress. Doing your method than in probably 10 years. Honestly, that's I'm not like, I don't tell, like, I wouldn't tell that lie. Like, just it's almost like I say it now. I'm almost like, you shouldn't say that because it's probably a lie, but it's not a lie. Like, it really isn't a lie. Like, I really made more progress in the last 12 weeks than probably in 10 years of traditional physical therapy, strength training, all that stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, I think that.
Yeah, no, it really is amazing. And let's just sign off on this. Secret of Athleticism on Instagram. Website is there's just, I think you got like some slashes in there. Let's just search Secret of Athleticism, or Chong Xie, or Hyper Arc Fascia Training. And you got tons of YouTube videos out there. If you go to Zhang Weili's Instagram, you're literally in the Instagram, the picture of you working with her. So, people can find you. It won't be a problem. All
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Anything else, Coach? Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it. I think thank you for this opportunity, and we're gonna do another one specifically on Kobe on Lakers.
Okay. All right. I have some info about that. So check Coach Chong's YouTube for that. All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Coach Chong. And that's it.